you may have actually tweeted this out, that you kind of you pull back the curtain a little bit on what matters to the enemy. And the reality is they want their symbols ruling over our communities. They're imperialists. They don't necessarily live here. Some of them do, but the real harassment and the intimidation and the threats came from people who don't live around here. And it was important to them that their symbols remain in the faces of my people. In my face, in my neighbor's face, even though the signs don't even say our community name. They don't care. They don't care. That word doesn't just mean we're not a sundown town. That word doesn't just mean, hey, there's no Jim Crow around here, right? Nobody believes in that. This sign means to these people that we're okay with transitioning children. That's what those signs mean. We're okay with drag queen story hour for youths. We're okay with predators getting an audience with children. That's what that sign means to these people, and they want it in our face.
Yeah, you desecrated their religion, essentially.
That's right. That's right. It's bingo.
What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
All right, everybody. This is In Liberty and Health, episode number 192. And today, returning to the show for his third appearance, Mr. Brandon Harnish. How you doing, dude?
Doing great, Kyle.
Nice. Well, I'm very, very happy to have you here. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I enjoy seeing the way you talk about stuff on Twitter. And as we were shooting the shit off the show, or before we started recording, you are probably one of the people that's responsible for changing my worldview slightly on political stuff. I would say more like you, Tho Bishop, Pete Quinones, and I feel like I'm missing a name here, but those are kind of a few of the guys that come off the top of my head. And listen to Orrin McIntyre a lot lately. I'm a little bit more observant and try to notice the meta pictures. So I know that's like real meta to start with. But yeah, if you got anything to add,
we can talk about that. I mean, I'm honored to be included in the same conversation as those guys. You know, I'm not a content creator. Content creation's definitely a lot of work. I have focused my efforts more on the nuts and bolts political sort of machine building and sort of being a political actor locally, and to some degree at the state level. I've been able to pass some, sort of industry-wide legislation at the state level, back-to-back years now. Governor's waiting to sign a bill here, but that's sort of industry niche kind of stuff. But at any rate, just plugging into the political system has been kind of more my bread and butter, and so to know that, because being in politics, it's not really my role to be a Tho Bishop or a Pete Quinones, to be an influencer in that way. Yeah. And matter of fact, I give credit to the people who can do that, because those are two very distinct roles. Yeah. And it's tough to juggle. Mm-hmm. But that being said, so the McIntyre, Tho Bishop, Pete Quinones, they're not all the same. I'm not the same as them either, but feel free to speak in a little bit more detail on maybe some specific changes that I or those guys have how have we influenced your political thinking?
Well, people always joke about the not interviewing the podcastee, but
yeah, right.
You'd have some really good insights on this, and I actually am curious your thoughts. So,
Well,
When
and
I
if I
first-
can explain, before you start, if I can explain to the audience, like, so you've told me that in private before, that, I've sort of changed the way you think, but we've never really got into it. And so I kind of prepared, when I was thinking about asking you this question, I thought he's definitely going to bring up like, hey, who's giving the interview here? But you want to invite you to maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, when I first started the show, and I would say all the way back to like 2014-ish. So I started the show in 2021 in October. And like I would say around 2014 is when I first heard of like Milo Yiannopoulos and Stefan Molyneux. Like my brother introduced me to them, and they're what really got me into politics. So obviously I came in from more of a right-wing thing. And then obviously, being in like a very red area, southwestern Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh, which is mostly rural and then just like small towns. And then obviously working in the automotive business, mostly grew up around Republicans, and like still to this day, I pretty much only interact with people who are Republicans, MAGA people, conservatives. That's my dad, my mom, my stepdad. I mean, everybody I know is pretty much right of center. So I was always extremely libertarian because my brother was a anarcho-capitalist. Originally, he was like a real left liberal, and then he turned sharply into an anarcho-capitalist. And I was pretty much like, okay, well, it has to be the Libertarian Party or bust. Like, this is, you have to be unwavering in your principles, right?
Right.
Because we're only looking at this through the least violent candidate, or at least the candidate that pledges all the right libertarian things. So, when I started talking to guys like you, though, Pete, Kenny Cody, and like I said, I'm missing some names off the top of my head, and kind of noticing the way that things played, especially over 2020, I began to realize that, like, if you're just going to sit here and keep voting the Libertarian Party, it's like an infallible position. And I've laid this out to people before, but essentially you could say that, like, well, you can't blame me because I voted Libertarian. So I didn't vote for either of these two that are going to completely fuck up the country. And if you would have just listened to me, which nobody's going to, you're never going to have this mass voting of people voting Libertarian. If you would have just listened,
we'd be in paradise, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
If I can chime in, that's a really, I sort of learned that in a very tangible way here locally, where I joined, and I continue to say this, I joined the Republican Party because there was a problem.
Yeah.
It was not, I am not out promoting the Republican Party as being perfect. It's not. The reason I joined is because there was a problem. So the criticisms libertarians like to make of the Republican Party are generally true. They're valid. But that's a reason for us, libertarian-minded people, paleos, liberty-minded people, whatever, to get involved in the Republican Party. Yeah. Because, when we as libertarians say, no, they're not doing the right thing, we're in the Libertarian Party, we can't expect our voices to be heard, right? This is a matter of, there's a civic arena, and you're either in it or you're out of it. And if you're not in it, then your enemies are going to take your space that is rightfully yours in that arena. And we may not like it. We weren't given, nobody asks our consent, right? Again, libertarians understand. Nobody asked me. I didn't sign the social contract. No, you didn't. But you're involved anyways, aren't you? Yeah. I mean, that's the nature of force. You're forced into this situation. Are you going to defend yourself? Are you going to participate in the systems and use the tools that are available to you? Or are you going to, sit there and watch this whole thing wash away and wash over you? And it might just take your whole home with you. So, and another thing you mentioned, and I took a note here, I wrote it down, unwavering in principles. And I find that what's in libertarian circles, what it means to be unwavering in principles is that in an argument, you take the most extreme position. But what I find has much more value is not the extreme position. It is a strong position or a good position that you take publicly and you don't wave from, right? So again, if the dichotomy is not clear here, we can be correct in an argument and we can take the most extreme position. That's fine. But when it comes to on the ground politics, I want somebody to be correct 80% of the time. That's fine. But if they're courageous in that 80%, if they're unwavering, that matters so much more than the 20% where we may have a disagreement. And again, this is not simply saying I'm not just saying here that don't make the good the enemy of the perfect, or the perfect the enemy of the good, right? We've all heard this. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is courage matters more than principles. It's the unwavering that matters, and that unwavering in your principles. It's the unwavering that matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. I will take courage over ideological purity in this game every time.
Right.
So with that said, I'll give you the floor again here. I just want to chime in.
That's okay, because actually there's a point there that you made that I actually really liked. And one of the people that I want to talk about in particular is Thomas Massie, and Rand Paul kind of connects to this point as well. When you came up, or when you brought up the unwavering part there, think about 2020 and think about how much sack it had to take Thomas Massie and Ron DeSantis even to a degree, but like Thomas Massie to literally stand down every single member of the political class and say, we're going to force this vote against Donald Trump, and then getting knocked by the fucking president, who's the leader of his own party, to say, we're voting on this and I'm against you on this.
You can't begin to understand the balls on that man. I mean, that is heroic. That may be the single greatest courageous political act that any Republican has taken over the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's right up there with Pat Buchanan running against George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992. That takes courage. It really does. 96, you're running for, when Pat Buchanan ran in 92, he ran against an incumbent Republican president to make a point that George W. Bush, the party, was forgetting the conservatives of the heart. They were forgetting our people, the working man. And when you're in this game, you begin to recognize the value of courage in a whole new way. Because you know what? A lot of people have the right ideas behind closed doors. But what I have found is that in our private lives, integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. But in politics, integrity is doing the right thing when everyone is watching. It's doing it in public. It's doing it when the pressure is on, when there are people who are going to be upset with you. That's when courage matters. That's political integrity. And it's the most valuable asset. It's a diamond.
Right. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, when you look at Rand Paul being able to say, like, this is bullshit, Thomas Massie saying this is bullshit, Ron DeSantis saying we're not going to lock down anymore, and then actually being well read on it too. That's what's very, very admirable about that. So I guess kind of getting back to the point earlier, because we'll be going off on side tangents forever. One thing that also kind of really stood out to me was like, okay, so if I'm playing in the Libertarian Party game, what's the likelihood that I'll ever get to do what you sent me a tweet after I said something about voting in support of Matt Gaetz' solution, where you literally text your representative and said, hey, please vote in favor of Matt Gaetz' solution, with like a little American flag emoji and a thumbs up. And you said, well, admittedly, he didn't vote for it, but like, if I'm in a separate political party, what is the likelihood that, first of all, they're even going to give a fuck what I have to say, or that I'm even going to get their number to say anything to them? Because I called my congressman. I sent my congressman a message after he voted down against Matt Gaetz' solution and said, I don't feel represented because I called you twice and said, hey, please vote in favor of this. Clearly there's the political aspiration in some of the Republicans to vote against this, some of the war stuff going on, but like, what's the benefit of being in the Libertarian Party when it comes to situations like that? Like, I get the argument for the Libertarian Party if you're saying, hey, we're like planting our flag here and saying this is going to be our cultural vehicle. We could debate that all day long, but I think that's what kind of the general idea is. But once again, they're never going to have that chance to say, hey, let me text my congressman and tell him you should support this. That was something that I was like,
yeah, I mean, the Libertarian Party can remain pure specifically because it is nowhere near power. I mean, it's just the reality. I mean, it's a little bit like, imagine if Samwise were criticizing Frodo because Frodo is like being devoured by this ring, and Samwise like, you wussy, I could do that fine. Why are you so pathetic? Like, just give me the ring, I'll carry it. It's a nerdy reference, but it is a little bit like that. And I think, I think there is an interesting kind of fraternity, although that might not be the right word. But when you're in the public eye, and, you know, just for example, you're in the Republican Party, first of all, and then you're an elected official, you're in the public eye, there is a level of respect that comes with that from other people. Now, granted, this is not a job that commands respect, but it's the nasty, filthy, dirty nature of the work that other people in this world, other elected officials, kind of recognize. So you do have, you know, at least if I send a senator or a congressman or a state representative a message, say, hey, I'm on county council here. This is my position on this. To some extent, they can at least appreciate the fact that you're in the arena. You're in this really violent, and like you're in a very disgusting world. Violent isn't exactly the right word, but the libertarian would recognize, right? The libertarian would say, yeah, you have a monopoly on the use of violence within a defined geographical area. And so I respond like, yes, I do. I've talked about this with my wife. Like, I am one of a handful of people who can legally steal in my county. That is a power that is, you know, it's a disgusting, filthy kind of power. And you kind of have to name it as that, right? Like those politics, you know, we wear the suits and the ties, and, you know, we don't want to perceive it that way. And look, there is a function there. Right? Like, and maybe I'm getting off into the weeds here, but we can come back to that later. But to speak more directly to your point about being able to just be involved in that process, right? Again, I have come to look at this. I am one very small part of a very large institution that has existed, was here before I came along, and it will be here after I am gone. And I am trying to engage in this historic process, and I'm trying to critique it from within its own tradition. I'm an American. I'm a Republican. I have embraced Pat Buchanan because he's a Republican who did the right thing. I'm not talking about, you know, Harry Brown, right? I'm pointing to other Republicans. And although Harry Brown was great, but I'm trying to work within this institution and within this American tradition. And when you plug into that, it does change your calculation. You begin to see some of the shortcomings in maybe libertarianism proper, or third party libertarianism, and how, you know, it is. I struggle to articulate the problem with it, but it's a little like, I mean, imagine you're in a church community, you're in a Christian church community, and you come along and say, well, we should just be Trinitarian, or we're Trinitarian, we should just be Unitarian, right? Like, imagine going to a Catholic church or a Wesleyan church with this long tradition of Trinitarianism and saying we should just be Unitarian. It's a little bit like what the libertarians are doing with a third party approach. Libertarians have a home in the system already. We can join the Republican Party, or you can join, if you're a left libertarian, social democratic libertarian, you can join the Democrat Party and try to introduce maybe some of your more Hayekian ideas. I have a lot of Hayekian ideas I like. But you kind of get my point, right? You can bring the Reason magazine libertarianism to the Democrat Party, but we fight over scraps. We're not in the game. We're not a part of the tradition. We're not a part of the American system. And, you know, and I guess maybe that's the irony of it, right? I mean, the agorist, he's completely fine not being a part of the system. Right. But why would you have a third party in a two-party system. You're either in or you're out. It's like the vegan who's putting fake sausage on their pizza. No, just eat.
Yeah.
I don't know, just eat your bread and pineapple pizza. Why, or the vegetarian who wants to put fake meat on the pizza, just eat a cheese pizza.
Yeah.
Just go all in. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of going down I don't know if this is speaking to your concerns, but that's kind of that's been my message on Twitter. That's why I'm on Twitter, is just to continually encourage Mises libertarians, paleos of all stripes, get in the game, because we need more people in this party. And you'd be surprised how many Republicans are paleo libertarians at heart, but they don't have leaders. They don't have an example. They don't have people willing to push the agenda. This is politics is a game of leadership. It is all about leadership. Thomas Massey will tell you the same thing. It's all about who's the Speaker of the House. Thomas Massey's been in Congress under bad leadership, and he can't do anything.
I am stoked to tell you guys about the show's new sponsor. I am now working with MTS Nutrition, which is a brand that I've believed in for a very long time, and they run awesome sales and they have awesome products. So I want to tell you about their amazing protein powder, which you're going to ask me how many pounds I have of the protein powder, and the answer is all of them. So here I got Red Velvet Cake, 25 grams of protein, and they have the amino acids and everything on there, 59 servings. Peanut butter fluff, fluffernutter, 26 grams of protein, and then also the chocolate chip cookie, which literally has real pieces of chocolate chip cookie in there. So 27 grams of protein, 180 calories. As I've talked about on the show, getting your protein in is very, very important, so make sure you hit that link below and purchase your protein powder through MTS Nutrition. Boom!
And we're always looking for that tipping point too. Right, that Malcolm Gladwell idea of the tipping point, right? It's the domino effect. You have to have one person stands up, and eventually you tip, right? And you've kind of seen that to some extent in the Republican Party in some ways. The fact that there were 18, 20 votes for Speaker of the House, that's unprecedented since the Civil War. But you're beginning to see the work that these paleo-minded people, the old Buchananites, the Ron Paul people, the Trump people, have put in to sort of tip the apple cart. We're Jesus in the temple. We're flipping tables. These thieves are milking they're destroying the dollar. They're milking the working class. They're eroding our standard of living. We're flipping tables. That's what we're trying to do. And I just need more people. I need more table flippers.
Yeah. Well, one thing that you laid out there that I liked, and this was always kind of my vision when it came to libertarianism, especially as I talk to more and more people, is that the leadership part, where you do need leaders, because I don't think you have kind of like a groundswell of culture, right? Like, because totalitarian regimes are kind of filled in at every level. It's not like it's top down. You have leaders at every level. There's a decentralized revolution, right? You're going to have leaders at every level, but those leaders are required to therefore drive things forward because your local community looks for that leader, and that's almost like the way our government's kind of set up in a way, if you think about it, because if you look at your congressman, your local township, your mayor or whatever, then that person should be, in theory, a leader that's elected through your community and kind of, represents your values in a political sense. So I really think that point's important. And I think Tho made that point to me once in a tweet, and I was like, I can't agree more. And I think that's what a lot of people are, especially libertarians, who try to be so hyper individualist, that they tend to lose this bigger point of like, you need to be a leader. You need to be, willing to put your own neck out there and say that you're responsible for this group of people. I mean, it's the same, kind of deal as, if you're the father of a family, right? You're the priest of the household, where you're responsible for everybody that's underneath your roof. Okay, well, now extend your roof to a whole, political committee and a county, and now you are the leader there, and your ideas are going to be presented forward as the representation of all these people.
I mean, look, I never understood the value of leadership until I got into politics. And once I was in politics, it became pretty apparent to me that really there are only two things that matter: courage and leadership. The ideas are in the backseat. They matter, believe me. I mean, I'm looking for, I mean, the ideas are a little bit of they're the spear, right? But you have to find the man to pick up the spear. And without that man, look, Napoleon said, I found the crown of France in the gutter and I picked it up. I need Mises libertarians who are ready to pick up the crown and put it on and say, follow me. And you know what? Sometimes people will, sometimes people won't. But it's a real challenge, particularly when you have the groundswell of Republican voters, primary voters. They're not vocal, right? This is a lonely world. Okay. You try to do the right thing. You push. You're not getting thousands of messages of support, especially on the local level. People just don't pay that much attention. Right. I mean, and oftentimes all you hear is criticism. All right. And it can be tempting to overthink it, but it's about integrity. When push comes to shove, you can't worry about what other people think. You just have to do the right thing. That's a really hard thing to do when you're in the public eye. I mean, when we're talking about just giving change back to the cashier, if she, okay, that's great. That's integrity and private. But integrity when everybody is looking is really tough. There's a lot of pressure on you from the inside. And sometimes, look, I've said this before. I actually tweeted out today. Travis Tritt announced that he would be pulling all of the Bud Light merchandise, all the Bud Light drinks from his concert tours. I think Anheuser-Busch generally, that stuff's gone. And he says, there's a lot of country musicians who are afraid to say anything, but I'm not. And I quote tweeted him. I said, courage is contagious. Kyle, courage is contagious, but so is cowardice. And if you have cowards around you and they freak out and they panic at the thought of somebody not liking them, if they are more concerned about appearances than about doing the right thing and letting the chips fall where they may, it's a problem, and it spreads like a virus inside of a party, inside of an organization. Man, it's all about leadership. Coming right back around to that. It is all about leadership.
Yeah, that's a really, really good bow on that point. But, we saw that kind of in 2020 where, like, in my workplace, and once again, I've grown up to tell you how kind of like the last place I worked, one of the largest donors to Trump, I worked with the guy. I mean, he had the MAGA hat, little Christmas ornament. He got a letter that said, hey, you're one of Pennsylvania's biggest donors to Trump. I mean, these guys are as Republican as the day is fucking long, right? These guys were all masked up in 2020, saying that they're going to go get vaccinated. They were telling me to get vaccinated and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, that's a lot to fucking deal with guys that you interpret as dissidents. And this is not necessarily knocking them for that decision, because like the propaganda was fucking coming down on everybody. But like, these guys kind of succumb to the propaganda and what was being thrown their way in March, April of 2020. And, I had the foresight of saying, like, this is bullshit. And if you look back on my Facebook, I always comment on the post where I want to say it was like March 5th of 2020. I said, I'm not scared of the coronavirus.
I remember that. Yeah.
I knew from the outset it was bullshit. Yeah. But like, once again, I don't fault people for not knowing, but, obviously after a certain amount of time, I'm sure if I went back there and talked to them about it now, they'd be like, yeah, maybe we got that wrong. Or they would just say, hey, we're not scared of it now, and I'm not going to go get my booster or whatever. But like, it goes to your point where cowardice is contagious, or is contagious the same way courage is.
And I guess to some extent I think about this, right, Kyle? And you've got big Republican donors, which means they're involved in the apparatus. And they were under the same pressure that Thomas Massey stood up to. Right? It's the same voices. It's all the same money. It's all the same interests, all the same power players saying what needs to happen, right? And what you're going to do. It's and libertarians, we're in a unique position because we're not in the game, right? We're on the outside. We don't feel that pressure. We don't have those voices. We're not around major money, worried about what the donors are going to think. And you know what? That's part of the maybe the most embarrassing thing about the party at that time is that the Libertarian Party is not even a player, and they still bent the knee. They were never going to get any kind of reward for it other than just like personal reward, maybe, a little, again, yeah. And they still succumb to the pressure. That's probably the most embarrassing thing about it. When a Republican breaks, there's a lot of pressure. But when a Libertarian breaks, like that's pretty pathetic. Because there is no pressure for a Libertarian. None. Come on. My God. Henchmen and the rest of that crew, like, dude. And you know what? Truth be told, they probably didn't break at all. They were probably believed in it. They believed in the propaganda. They weren't even resistant. They weren't even resistant to it. Yeah. And so that's my take on that, I guess, to some extent. And your bosses, your former bosses, that's, look, they're big donors. They're getting it too. And so that's where you've got guys like DeSantis. Granted, for the first 2-3 weeks, sure, did what everybody else did, looked around pretty quickly and said, you know what? Nope, we're not doing this anymore. Yeah. This is a joke. The evidence isn't there. He surrounded himself with good people, and he demonstrated courage. He demonstrated aptitude. I've tweeted out before, like, at some point results matter. Yeah. Like Trump, I'm indebted to him for changing the party. And I'm not saying there's no circumstance, where I wouldn't support him or vote for him again. But if, DeSantis hasn't declared, but if DeSantis is an option, I think that's where my vote's going at this state.
Okay. So I'm actually glad you pivoted there, because this is something else I want to talk to you about. I've been really thinking about Trump and DeSantis. So like, let's zoom out to kind of like federal and foreign policy. Okay, so DeSantis is an ideological neocon by himself. This is pretty evident by his voting record, although there was that one vote where he voted against regime change in Syria. I don't necessarily put a lot of political stake at that because, it was Obama at the time, and a majority of his other votes are all for, spying, bad foreign policy stuff, whatever. Okay. So put a little pigeonhole on that, because I want to come back to that later, because there's something that's shaky about this whole concept for me right there. Trump isn't ideological in that way. In fact, I don't think he's ideological at all. He's pretty ego driven. And his big downfall is that he's very susceptible to his ego, where he can be kind of pulled any which way by somebody who just tells him what he wants to hear, or if he seems to like them in that moment. Hence some of the people that he hired weren't good at all. He had 4 years, and then at the end of his 4 years, he finally hired somebody who was decent. Colonel Douglas McGregor, in the the lame duck period, to fix his foreign policy. And it's like, okay, well, you gave the dude like no time at all to do anything right, but you got John Bolton and Mike Pompeo.
The Pompeo Bolton thing is tough to forget. Look, and to sort of set you up, I guess, you can probably recite to me more flaws in Ron DeSantis than I could ever, that I probably even know.
No, okay. Well, yes. So this final point here is that if you look at the response in 2020, Trump kept Fauci around the entire time, right? Now look at DeSantis and the way that he handles things down in Florida. Yep. He's able to assess when shit's going wrong. Like Trump had a good intuition for like which way and what to say. And he still kind of has it, because like there was a speech that he gave where he said, the enemy's not Russia, the enemy's not China, the enemy is them. And like that was spot on. And I don't think he was initially, I was talking to Scott Horton about this, but I don't think initially he was going to say the enemy is them. I think he was going to say the enemy's China. But though that little light bulb went off and it was the right thing. Now, DeSantis, on the other hand, I think if it was DeSantis in the White House in 2020, he would have probably said like, okay, Fauci has a good record. But then after a while, he would talk to the Jay Bhattacharya, the Dr. Latipo, I think his name is down there, the Surgeon General. And then he would have said, all right, if Fauci's completely fucked this whole thing up, let's get him out of here. DeSantis has that eye for talent. And look, I will knock him all day for his neoconservative stuff and his Zionism, but like when it comes to picking the right people for the job, he's pretty much second to none. And when I see Thomas Massie come out to endorse him, I'm kind of like, will he be as bad as he was on foreign policy when he has somebody as phenomenal as Thomas Massie in his ear? So I know that's a long tangent, but like that really got my wheels kind of turning. Like this is a very good development. I'm really excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I hope we find out. I mean, look, like I mentioned, I just I'm certainly not in a position to, you know, have a home run derby with attacks on DeSantis and then knock him back at you. I don't know enough about it. I really
that's
don't.
okay.
But what I have seen is really what you're saying here, and at some point results matter. And past performance predicts future performance.
Yes.
And so I look at Trump, I'm like, man, if Trump brought back Steve Bannon and said, you know, and he ran, and I think I said this to you before, if Donald Trump spent the next couple of years going to McDonald's and handing out MAGA hats, I'd probably vote for him. Because that's where he looks the best. But if he keeps going after DeSantis like this, takes no responsibility for COVID, takes no, I mean, the Bolton stuff, and the line about, you know, the enemy isn't Russia, the enemy isn't China, the enemy is Washington, D.C. Aaron McIntyre retweeted that, and he's the exact words of the text. But do you believe it? Do you understand what it means?
Okay, you know what's funny is that when you told me this, I didn't quite understand it, but now hearing you say it, looking back at it, I'm like, oh, he's campaigning with Lindsey Graham and knocking DeSantis.
I mean, it's a line from Starship Troopers. I mean, he is, you know, Trump is saying the right thing, but I think many of us have lost faith that that he is ready to execute. I mean, and again, like he's also, I mean, he's very old. I mean, that's kind of a cheap shot. Maybe people would say that, but I've learned that this is not a young man, or this is not an old man's game. This is a young man's game. And man, DeSantis has American Caesar written all over him. And okay, you know, we can pick apart his congressional votes 10 years ago. My politics today are very different than my politics 10 years ago. Now, does that mean DeSantis is? No, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. It's just a recognition that, you know, people do change, and we've seen a lot of good things out of Ron DeSantis. I mean, if you would have looked at his congressional record, I mean, on anything, he wasn't Thomas Massie, he wasn't Ron Paul. You wouldn't have predicted everything he's done in Florida up to this point. I really don't think so. So, I mean, frankly, DeSantis is an inspiration to me as a Republican, and particularly the way he handles the administrative state. What he's doing with Christopher Rufo in Florida, for lack of a better word, really, no, I'm not going to say it. He's clearing house in these administrative bureaucracies and going on an absolute tear against wokeism and progressivism, DEI, all that inside these institutions, particularly colleges and universities. I mean, this guy is executing the Bannon playbook. As far as I can see, I mean, I'm not a Bannon expert, but that's my vague impression here. I mean, going to war against the administrative state is exactly what Republicans have to do. It's exactly what we have to do. And he's doing it. I don't know. I mean, imagine DeSantis doing in Florida, doing what he's done in Florida to the Federal Reserve. That's the administrative state. He is the MVP of the AAA league. I mean, let's get him up into the majors and let him go to work. Now, I understand it's a very different game when you're in DC. Maybe he is better suited in Florida. And if that's the case, just don't run. Right? I beg. The last thing I want to see is DeSantis run and then lose in a vicious Republican primary.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of to that point as well. And this is kind of like a dumb question, but like personally, I think if Trump runs again, everyone's seeming to point to like Kari Lake as his VP. I think he loses. I think he gets his ass beat if he runs, especially with Kari Lake, just because Kari Lake's such an unlikable person to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are actually fatigued of just like Trump and the reaction. Like, I kind of think that's what happened in 2020. Good.
Kari Lake is defined by the election controversy in Arizona.
Right.
And I think Kari Lake is a talented leader. And I think she has a real gripe, a legitimate gripe in Arizona.
Yeah.
I think her accusations are probably justified, or are probably correct.
Sure.
But until there is final justice delivered in Arizona, I don't think he can pick her as a running mate. It's just more election 2020, stolen election. And look, I'm not saying it's not legitimate. But I am saying that and I'm not saying those aren't real problems that don't need to be solved. And
but
frankly,
people don't want to keep hearing about 2020.
People don't want to keep hearing about it, right? So Republicans have to do that, right? Republicans like myself, we have to make those changes to election law. We do. But it's not necessarily your public facing. Look, I ran here locally with a mission to clean up some of the administrative bureaucracies that the issues we're having and we have had, and to put policies in place to prevent this misconduct. That is not an election winner. I put taxpayers first on my signs. I believe in that. I do believe in responsible spending. I believe in not wasting taxpayer money. I don't believe in funding a bunch of fluff. I'm a traditionalist, right? Those are things that I promoted. Again, I'm not saying that these aren't issues that really need to be dealt with. It's just they're not election winners.
Right.
But we do need to deal with them. That's my view. I think Kari Lake's pretty great. I kind of like her. I think she's really impressive. I think she comes across. I've been impressed. Maybe not everybody feels that way. But and we can have. I mean, I'm not exactly well informed on the election scene. I mean, I can continue having this conversation with you. I just don't know if that's, to some extent, I think what I bring to the table in the sort of online liberty community is a Republican perspective locally. I don't mean to sort of move the conversation away.
Yeah, that's fine.
It needs to die of its own volition, I think, is the Seinfeld line. But I want to make sure I'm providing some value here. And I mean, Tho would have much better opinions than I would.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I guess on a local level then, because this kind of does, I guess, go to that conversation as well. Do you think the appetite is more for DeSantis or Trump? Because like I said, in my opinion, I think Trump loses, but I think if it's DeSantis, I think DeSantis wins, because DeSantis is he's a spear.
Yeah, with the grassroots, it's Trump all the way. I mean,
okay.
Nobody's got DeSantis flags in their lawn and all that. I mean, that's just the reality. And I respect the hell out of what Trump has done to this party. I mean, it needed an exorcism, and exorcisms are nasty. I mean, look, just watch the movie. Right? It's not all fun and games here. The priest dies at the end. Spoiler alert. And so that was required. But here locally, it is Trump country. It will continue to be Trump country. And that's kind of the challenge for Ron DeSantis, is that he is actually, in a very odd way, DeSantis is carrying the Trump torch, but yet finds himself at odds with the man he's getting the torch from, right? Trump, through this party, flipped tables in this party, going after the establishment in DC. And DeSantis has become a great governor because he has interposed himself between his people and DC. It is this geographical rivalry that both of these men have sort of become figureheads in. And we're sort of seeing this competition between these two great populists, although maybe not ideological populists, they function that way. And so here on the grassroots level, I don't think that there is a, I think people still love Trump, and I think people love DeSantis too. And from where I stand, I continue to cite these men as political heroes in my party. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking to Republicans, when I'm talking to other members of my party, and I'm trying to bring them in my direction, I'm encouraging them. Look at Ron DeSantis. He makes me proud to be a Republican. All right, I'm speaking to my people from within their own tradition. I cite Thomas Massey. I cite Ron Paul. I cite Pat Buchanan. And right now, I'm proud to be able to cite the Indiana State Legislature that recently banned trans surgeries on minors. Mm-hmm. I told the sponsor of the bill, I said, next step is ban it altogether. This stuff is crazy. This stuff is crazy. And I know we can talk all day about the right to do what you want with your body, libertarianism and all that. I get it. But do I have a cohesive libertarian argument for why that stuff needs to be banned for adults too? No, there isn't one. That's the downfall of libertarianism.
Well, it's kind of funny.
That is a tongue-in-cheek comment. Let me be clear. I've not worked this out. So,
well, yeah, that's all right. So this actually kind of does get to another thing I wanted to talk about, because I told you I was the Oren McIntyre a little bit, and I listened to him on Pete's show where they were kind of talking about the left's ownership of like the term racist, and how when you say the left is the political left are the real racists, why that just kind of falls flat, and why nobody gives a shit is because, once again, the political right and the cultural right doesn't have a monopoly on this specific like feeling, right? Like when the political right tries to shame, or even the cultural right tries to shame people, it's not the same effect, because you realize that the cultural right doesn't necessarily have as much like capital as like the whole political left. Because when you think about the political and cultural left, you think about entertainment, you think about a lot of the political class, you think about all these institutions that, like, if you're shamed by them, you're like barred from society. So when the right says that, oh, you're a racist, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Just like say a mean tweet to me? Fuck it, I'll just block you.
Michael Malice has a line that the Republican Party platform is a collection of things the left allows us to believe. And there is so much truth in that. And it doesn't matter what we write down on paper. Republican behavior is exactly that. If somebody calls you a racist, oh my God, I'm not a racist. I have black friends. That's what Republicans say. It's the boomer con response. Call me a racist. I don't care. People call Republicans racist all the time. Yeah. I am currently in a lawsuit. I'm suing a couple of people for defamation. I'm not gonna talk about it, but it does go back to the tweet storm over the sign issue. Mm-hmm. And my attorney asked me, "You're filing for defamation over some comments they made." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, what about these racist comments?" He's like, "That could be defamation too." I don't care. I don't care if somebody calls me racist. They've been calling us racist forever. I've been as long as I've been alive. Democrats have been calling Republicans racist. Mm-hmm. That doesn't bother me. And but some Republicans, it bothers them a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Whole lot. They just want to be liked by the left. Oh my God. If somebody from the Indy Star or the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette or some journalist somewhere doesn't like a Republican, they're Republicans. It's just the end of the world for them. They just want to be liked. Or better yet, they just want to be left alone.
What's up, everybody? We're going to take a quick break and tell you about the show's sponsors. We are brought to you by LMNT electrolytes. I've been using this stuff for years, and what I've honestly found is that if I didn't have electrolytes before some kind of cardio, and sometimes even before workouts, that my workout performance, or definitely cardio performance, would suffer greatly. Sodium is responsible for every single movement pretty much in your entire body, and let's say you drink a lot of caffeine like I like to do, then maybe it is a good idea, like I do every single morning, put some LMNT chocolate electrolytes there in your coffee to get a little bit more sodium, potassium, and magnesium in your coffee, so that way whatever diuretic effect you get from the caffeine is pretty much diluted by the fact that you put chocolate salt in it. Also, it tastes really, really good. Get some chocolate cream or hazelnut cream or even coconut, and mix that all up. It tastes really, really good. So yeah, make sure you drop by, go to drinklmnt.com/inlibertyandhealth and pick you up some electrolytes today. All right, guys, thanks.
Let me tell you, when the mob is at your door, you want to be left alone, but the mob doesn't want to leave you alone. That's why they're a mob, Kyle. The side that wants to win will always beat the side that wants to be left alone. That's McIntyre's line.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way. When those leftists on Twitter came after me and they started calling my colleagues, calling my friends, calling me a racist to these people, to my colleagues, harassing people, everybody just wanted to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to leave us alone.
Yeah, dude. It's
I was just gonna let that rest.
It's hard to think of a good response, but I did see Pete tweet today something about, you won't have your liberty unless you're willing to stick a gun in somebody's mouth and tell them you're not teaching that commie shit here, which sounds fucking horrible. But at the same time, like, at a certain point, when do you say no? And
I shared a meme the other day. It was Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in the camps, we learned one thing: the enemy only responds to force. That is the only thing they know.
Mm-hmm.
Violence and intimidation. That is all they know. They want to scapegoat you. They want to isolate you. They want to destroy you. They hate you. They hate our values. They hate our communities. They look at us, Kyle, the same way the Bush administration looked at Iraq. They just want to nuke us from the face of the earth. Lucky for us, we're their tax farm.
Mm.
We grow their food. We fix their cars. And it is, they think, they drive through rural Indiana and they see rural communities that are impoverished because their jobs have been shipped overseas. They see rural communities that have been terrorized by drugs because we have open borders. They see rural communities that have been strip mined by the Federal Reserve because of a rigged financial system. And they think that our communities are falling apart because we're not progressive. They think it's because we don't have pride flags and that we're not high-minded. We're not elevated. And they think that, and they hate us. And those are the people, those people that they hate, the left hates, the progressives hate, those are the people I represent. Those are the people I try to remember. And those people, they elect Republicans to go defend their interests, and Republicans face a little bit of pressure, or Republicans face just a little bit of adversity, and we fold. And we can't understand why our constituents are so angry, why Tea Parties exist. We can't understand why groups like Liberty Defense exist. They're pretty active here in the area. And oh my gosh, we hate the tactics, the nasty tactics of guys like Will Fight from the National Association of Gun Rights. We hate the tactics. We want decorum. We want to play by the rules. And we lose. We lose. I mean, I was talking to a good friend of mine today, and he said, man, you are black-pilled. And he said, don't worry, I'm black-pilled too. I said, well, listen, I said, the black pill gives you a little bit of freedom in this game, because when you're red-pilled, you're holding out hope. Mm-hmm. When you're black-pilled, you're just trying to stop the tide. You're standing in the river, and it is washing over you, and it's crashing down around you, and all you have to do is stand. Like, look, I'm just going to do whatever I can to stop this train from going off the tracks. I asked my friend what brought it up. I asked him, I said, what would it be like? I'll ask you, Kyle, what would it be like to live in a real country? A real country where your values are represented in institutions, where the people who rule don't hate you, where, my God, you have a country that you actually feel like fighting to defend. Not the ruins, not that the ruins we're walking through, we're trying to rebuild this thing, but a country where you would be proud to defend it. There's a right-wing meme, and then I'll shut up here, but there's this meme going around, like, what did they fight for? And you see it in meme form where the men in Normandy, like, this is why they died, right? And it's a thought bubble, and it's, some drag queen reading to a child. This is why they died. And right-wingers are beginning to question, was World War II worth it? And that's where I am. It's like, man, you're black-pilled. There's freedom in it, though.
No, you know what?
I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to stop a train wreck. You feel like you're Superman, but you don't have super strength, and this train is running at you. Like, I'm going to try to stand in front of it.
I don't, you know what? And you're saying it's black pilled. As much as I hate the whole pilled terminology in a political context, I think it's actually a very, very optimistic white pill kind of note, because you're trying to get it off the tracks because you think you can do it, right? And not even knowing that you can do it, but you're under the impression that you can do something, and that you, even with all your flaws, could still manage to at least do something to push things in the right direction. I can't think of anything more optimistic than that. And maybe it's just because by my nature, I'm a pretty big optimist. I'm a relatively happy person, but like, any change that's for the good, and yeah, we're all cynical about political stuff, and like when you see somebody perhaps say or do the right thing, sometimes you're like, what the fuck's it mean? Does it really matter? Do they mean it? In a situation kind of like you're laying out there, I like I said, I think it's an optimistic note, because you're saying that I'm going to do something about this despite the odds, right? Because I think if you really were black pilled, you just say, all right, well, just fucking stick a gun in my mouth. I'm going to go sit at home, jack off, and do nothing else.
Well, right? I mean, I guess the black pill in me would say, I'm going to serve one term. I'm getting out of this, and I'm just going to let the whole thing go to hell. No, I mean, I'm not going to stay home. I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm not going to choose those. But there is, and look, I guarantee you there's a lot of guys in politics that get in, they get black pilled, and they're like, well, you know what? Let's just raid the treasury. All right, let's just ride this thing out. I'm going to get what I can out of it for myself and my family. And they're not going to do the right thing. They're going to go along to get along, because that's going to keep them in this cushy position. That's there. There are men who get in it and they believe in something, and they're in it long enough, and it gets them. I mean, it just, they get sucked into the abyss. And I'm not there. I don't think I'll ever get there. I've kind of planted my flag on something I believe in, and that's where we're going to go.
Okay. So like, I guess kind of going back to the sign deal, because you touch on it a little bit, but I remember I quote tweeted the picture shortly after you deactivated for a brief period on Twitter. I wish I had the exact quote up, but I said it was taking a shovel just to the roots of of progressivism in a locality, and the mob came after you, and that was kind of a game changer. Looking, from the outside looking in, because my interpretation is, and once again, you live in Indiana, I live here in Pennsylvania. You would think that small towns are safe, and that like your locale would be there for you, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But just like, it wasn't even like you came out vociferously against the sign. You just said, hey, we're like removing this, because like, who cares? If you're just not, why does the town have to be inclusive? Who cares? Like, if you're a welcome member of the community and you don't act like an asshole, you're probably going to be fine anywhere you go in most parts of this country. So why does there have to be a sign that says we're inclusive? Like, nobody cares.
Our county spends a lot of money, both city and county, making sure that we're not an inclusive community. You come here and you mess around, commit crimes, you act a fool, You get arrested and you wind up in the criminal courts. You wind up going through the justice system and you go to jail.
Right.
Spend a lot of money making sure we're not an inclusive community. We have drug task force. We spent out, I don't know any way to put it. And to be, I'm sorry, go ahead. I just, it's you know, the idea that this word has really taken on some kind of strange, like it is like sacred to the left, which is why it became such a flashpoint. And it's not sacred to me. It's a slogan that they use to get what they want. Yeah, you do. I think you may have actually tweeted this out, that you kind of you pull back the curtain a little bit on what matters to the enemy. And the reality is they want their symbols ruling over our communities. They're imperialists. They don't necessarily live here. Some of them do, but the real harassment and the intimidation and the threats came from people who don't live around here. And it was important to them that their symbols remain in the faces of my people. In my face, in my neighbor's face, even though the signs don't even say our community name. They don't care. They don't care. That word doesn't just mean we're not a sundown town. That word doesn't just mean, hey, there's no Jim Crow around here, right? Nobody believes in that. This sign means to these people that we're okay with transitioning children. That's what those signs mean. We're okay with drag queen story hour for youths. We're okay with predators getting an audience with children. That's what that sign means to these people, and they want it in our face.
Yeah, and you desecrated their religion, essentially.
That's right. That's right. It's bingo. Yes,
because
I was going to take down their religious symbols.
Yep. That's exactly what they want. It was like putting a
the Ten Commandment controversy from 20 years ago.
It was like essentially hanging their crucifix within your town, which I'm guessing probably isn't largely pro drag queen story hour and pro, Bozo the Clown with vagina and a mustache reading to little kids.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an 80% Republican county.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, it's a kind of circle back to your sort of original question with regard to the signs, and maybe you can repeat it. I'll kind of let you steer the conversation here.
Just like it's really impressive to me, and I know this isn't necessarily a question, but it's more of like a statement. I'm curious kind of your thoughts as it's kind of happened, but like just how like the reaction to it was so surprising to me, because it seems something so small, like like somebody wouldn't care about it. Like if there's a little picture right here, like that is a piece of paper from the first ever show that I played out in a bar. Like if someone threw it away, I'd be a little broken up, but like, it's a sign, right? So to speak, isn't it? It kind of means something to me. My old guitar player gave it to me because he knew it was the first show I ever played. It's
so
something.
Kyle, this wasn't about the signs. This was about regulating the political speech of Republicans. This was about controlling what we're allowed to do.
Yes.
And it was the playbook was specifically out of Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. What they engaged in, the tactics they used were, I told my party, I said, I give them credit. They want to win. And they know how to play this game. Yeah. We're not prepared for it. I told a friend, I said, I felt like, that scene from Lord of the Rings where Aragorn runs at the Black Gates. Imagine the camera pans back behind him and everybody's just kind of standing around and then nobody follows him. Like, what is going on here? But I said, I take the L on that. My people were not prepared for that kind of social media campaign. We're a small community. We're stuck in the 70s and 80s technologically. We don't have the agility to respond to something like that in terms of infrastructure within the party. This was a well executed political social media attack. And, you know, my biggest, the reason I deactivated the account was to stop the phone call harassment on my people in the city hall, on county, and on me to some extent, although that was actually much more limited. The point wasn't to go after me. The point was to piss my colleagues off, to scapegoat me. They single you out. I mean, if I were getting harassing phone calls, that doesn't hurt me.
Right.
You call my friends, that hurts me, and they know that. So nobody was prepared for that situation. But the biggest mistake I made was deactivating the account in retrospect. Now I don't apologize for what I said, never have, and I certainly won't. I've staked my claim on it. And I've made that clear. I'll say that, the problem with, so the regret deactivating the account really, it stops the bleeding, but it sets a tone in the party that when the left screams, we listen. And that is a problem. And unfortunately, many of us that week in the party made mistakes. We weren't prepared for it. Right. In the future, we will not make those same mistakes, strategically, tactically. And, you know, I had a lot of people come around me. I had a lot of people support me during that week. A lot of people who were like, and you didn't do anything wrong. This is what our voters want. We're tired of this woke stuff. People have had it. And you know, the irony of it is, you know, I didn't even make the decision. Council members on the Board of Works made the decision to remove the signs. I was just, hey, I go to those meetings. It's in my district. I saw the news. I was like, all right, great. And I'm not going to speak more specifically than that. But it was a learning lesson in tactics for me and for the party. And there's a quote from Machiavelli: "Do not win by force what can be won by deception." All right. And I think that's something that Republicans need to take to heart to some degree. We don't always have to charge into battle, especially locally, over some of these issues. There are other ways we can play the game. Now, if you have a local Republican Party who is full of young, tech savvy guys who understand narrative, who understand social media, go ahead, fight that battle. But don't take a loaf of bread into a sword fight. If you can imagine an old cartoon with the French, you know, the French bread, you know, you don't want to wind up against a guy with a real sword and you have the loaf of bread. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I guess don't take a knife to a gunfight, right? That's what I'm saying. So tactically understand the limits of your people and don't pick fights that they're not prepared to fight.
Yeah, it's like I said, I would have never thought that a sign in 1,000 years would have been the thing that kind of got people going.
Well, yeah, okay. In my defense, I didn't know this was going to happen.
I
didn't really mean to do that.
But see, they saw you as the guy who was willing to, you know, take a dagger to the roots of what their religious ideology was. And even though you weren't necessarily the one to do it, you're the one saying that, hey, I'm okay with this. So therefore, hey, you're in the out group. Yeah. You did something that we recognize as transgression against our religion.
They were also stalking me. I had gotten their attention a few months prior, where there was a woman who posted a picture of a man breastfeeding a real baby.
I know where this is going.
Right. Yeah. And she said, just give me the chance to vote for a Christian nationalist or whatever. She's done. This is like child abuse, and the culture is celebrating it.
Mhm.
And I said, I think I replied something to the effect of like, yeah, I couldn't tell you my limits. I would
know
vote.
exactly what tweet you're talking about.
Yeah. And I was just ban abortion, ban teachers unions, tax credits for straight married couples, bring back the Spanish Inquisition, which is a Monty Python reference. If you don't know it. And that was when this particular group really, I got their attention, because that tweet got a lot of traction. People really liked it. And so it made the rounds. And then some of the leftists in Indiana were really upset because I was running for county council.
Right.
And, the rest is history. But, and I can look, I view to some extent, this is my fight with the Balrog. It was a very difficult experience. I learned a lot. I lost 6 pounds in a week. It was, you can come after me. I don't care. But when you come after my friends and my colleagues, that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
That really hurts me. It really gets me. And our enemies know that. And that's why they do it. They know it's effective. So I think you sort of to wrap up that, at least that portion, you do have to make sure that let me circle back to something I said at the beginning of this conversation, where you and Tho and Pete are you fill a different role than I do in the remnant, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have the freedom and the ability to speak a little bit more freely about some of these issues. And maybe a little bit more theoretically. You can speak more abstractly.
Mm-hmm.
You can explore some ideas in public ways that I can't. And I am learning that lesson. I'm learning my role now. I've never been in politics. Everybody's learning on the job here. And so to recognize that there are things that you can say that will hurt your people, like, okay, no taken.
Yeah, that's a brutal lesson to learn. And I mean, I made a thread on Twitter the one day where I just kind of laid out like, I don't care if people rip on me, because I entered the arena knowing full well that I am willing to, say some controversial shit, and I'm willing to piss people off if it means speaking the truth. I put out a tweet today about seed oils and artificial sweeteners, and people were ballistic. But like, look, if you're
right on that, by the way.
I know,
Yeah.
because I read the fucking studies, and everybody comes back with antidote and stuff like that. Like, and I always ask, please show me human outcome data, please. Because if you have something, I'll change my mind, but nobody ever does. And look, dude,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I talk to the fucking experts on this shit, dude. I've had people who run. The one dude who's been on the show, Alan Flanagan. He's on the cardiovascular board over in like the UK or something like that. He runs Alinea Nutrition, which is a whole fucking nutrition research thing. Like, I'm not stupid. I'm not a fucking expert in this stuff, but I talk to the people who are. So, and once again, I link studies in everything I say that's usually controversial like that, because I know people are going to get pissed off. But, if I'm in that game, the larger point is somebody came after my wife once, or like I've had like 2 people on Twitter insult my wife, and look, my wife is gorgeous and she is fucking tough as nails, but like, she has nothing to do with anything I say on Twitter. She's not responsible for me. I'm responsible for me. So like, if you come after people that I give a fuck about, then you're going to get blocked. And, if not, I'm coming after you.
I ran a blockchain on, I've got close to 14,000 people blocked on Twitter. And I locked down my account. I was just like, I've since unlocked my account, and I'll be, I guess I'll be more careful in the future about what I tweet. But the blockchain, highly recommended. And when I ran the blockchain of people who were following this account, I lost like 25 followers. A lot of stalkers.
Ooh.
Yep.
Fuck. Yeah, but anyways, people who would go after like my wife once again, who has nothing to, she doesn't care about any of this shit. The main reason why I started this fucking podcast is so she didn't have to fucking hear about it. I mean, every time I sit down to record a podcast, there's a picture of her and I walking on the beach right after we got married, because, you know, obviously that's a very meaningful moment for me. And, you know, the picture looks nice right there. But to the point, she didn't. Leave her out of this. Like, you can rip on me all day, I'll take it, but don't go after the people I give a fuck about.
Yeah, you know, what's kind of, I guess, that's kind of sick, especially for just, you know, just a podcaster.
Yeah.
Right? Going after family on a podcaster, that's freaky. Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean,
yeah,
you can't use the block button enough. You can't.
No,
I have people who disagree. It's like, you know, and the rationale is, well, they'll take a screenshot of the fact that you blocked them and then retweet it and take a victory parade. I'm like, well, yeah, they do that, but everybody who sees that knows that you were just being an asshole, and that's why they blocked you. Like, that's the only reason people get blocked.
There was somebody who tweeted out a screenshot that I blocked them 3 times. They tweet like 3 times in a row.
When people do that and I see it, I'm like, yeah, the guy that blocked you was almost 99.9% of the time. The guy that blocked the other guy was in the right. Don't be an asshole to people. You won't get blocked.
Yeah.
They're tweeting this out like there's some, you know, oh, look at the coward who blocked me. No, there's no cowardice on Twitter. You're just being a dick. That's why you blocked.
Well, I have been blocked by people, and it was probably well deserved. I can at least admit that, because I've
been blocked by people too, and yeah.
But you know, at least I hope you would know that when it comes to good people and people that I give a fuck about and that I think are good faith actors, I'll go to bat for anybody, even if we disagree on stuff. If I think that you're coming at it in good faith, I have no problem defending anybody, even if I completely disagree with the position. If I think you came to that position in good faith and that you're operating in good faith, I have no problem defending those people.
You know, Forest Mommy, she just went through a bit of an episode on Twitter, and I gained a lot of respect for her. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Stood her ground, and you know, she had these maniacs coming after her, and you know, unfortunately for the journalist, he didn't have an army of people ready to harass her.
Right.
She had a big following, and people really rallied around her, and that was actually really great to see. It's like, all right, you know, they're going after this jerk journalist who I think didn't really dox her, but you know, when you share that information to a large
audience, he knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. And boy, he really backtracked fast.
Well, you know what? I tweeted out shortly after that. I'm like, that is the white pill. You know, get up, be happy, go get a workout in, and know that, like, this is what can happen to you. Like, it may seem a little bit rocky in the first place, but like, look at all the people that said, oh, we're dunking now. Like, this is go time.
And here's the benefit of Force Mommy, you know, like, she goes through that on Twitter and all that stuff, right? Well, there was no army there to like descend on City Hall. She wasn't elected yet. She's a libertarian. My story wound up in my local newspaper, front page.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, dude. Like, all sign controversy. They called these leftists sent press releases up to Fort Wayne, a town north of us, a large city north of us, got their Fort Wayne big city media to come down to our city hall, ambush our mayor. Mayor has no idea what's going on. He's 79. And he's like, what is happening here? And, you know, so they swarm on him. They're interviewing the like District 3 chairwoman, you know, like Jim Banks district. All right. And they're interviewing the Democrat chair of that district. I'm like, wow, I have really kicked the hornet's nest here, haven't I? Yeah. And, it was just a wild couple weeks over this sacred word that, you know, it's very important to them. They do not want to see Republicans asserting control over their own counties. It drives them crazy. Yeah. And they saw a way in, and you know when I fully realized that it was a hit job, this was an orchestrated hit job on me, was when I was watching the news, the evening news. I was on the evening news, Kyle. This story was on the evening news. I'm watching the evening news. So I didn't talk to any journalists. Like, they're calling me, sending me emails. Like, I don't have anything to say. I'm not going to throw gasoline on this fire. You're not going to report what I say honestly anyways.
Right.
You're out there to make money. This is not a real story.
They want
this
clicks.
is a Twitter spat. You just want clicks. And so, excuse me. So they're calling me and all that stuff. But the moment I realized it was a hit job was when I'm watching the news and they share screenshots of my tweets and of people's opinions and stuff like that. And all the screenshots are from the activist group that was going after me. I'm like, oh, like they didn't even, the news station didn't even bother clipping out, Indiana Progressive's Twitter handle. Like, well, these sons of bitches. Like, this is all a very well-timed, very well-organized attack. And, and this thing can take a life of its own too. And so when I see, it's Indiana Progressives is like faint there in the screenshot, I'm like, hey, these people weren't on Twitter and just like these journalists organically found this. No, they're being sent screenshots. They're a bunch of leftist journalists anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working in tandem with this activist group, Indiana Progressives. And then there's a statement from the Democrat Party chair. It was all organized. It's all very nice and neat. And that's when I called my campaign manager. I'm like, hey, have you seen this? She's like, what? I'm like, this is the story. And she's like, dude, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's we don't control the narrative. And then, yeah, that's when we were both kind of recognizing like, okay, this was really a hell of an operation. Well done.
Yeah.
That day I sent out a Facebook post. It might've been a couple days later. It's very simple. Jeff Deist. The difference between the right and the left is that the left is serious.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. One last topic and then we'll call it a wrap.
Sure thing.
Van Hagar or David Lee Roth?
Oh God. So, okay, let's unpack this just for a minute. Do you mean Eddie Van Halen's guitar performances in those years? Or do you mean the bands as a whole?
The bands as a whole.
All right. So I think that the band as a whole, I'm going to go with Hagar.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unpopular opinion. I love the Roth stuff.
Yeah.
Damn it, man. OU 812 and Balance 5150. Like these albums are so great.
Yeah.
Cabo Wabo. That song, it Dreams. 5150, the song. That's one of Eddie's great guitar licks. Now you've really got me going here. I know you're trying to wrap up, but now I just want to talk about Van Halen. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I just bought a Wolfgang special. And so now I'm really.
Oh, you know what?
It's got the locking tremolo but it has the drop D, little D tuner.
Oh yeah.
The tremolo. So I'm really looking. You tune the whole thing half a step down and then you drop D, which is
D. So it'd be C sharp.
It's C sharp, right? And
I'm listening.
Oh, Amsterdam, underrated Van Halen song. If you look up the live, I think it's from 1995 Balance tour, Amsterdam. Eddie's tone, the performance, awesome. It's unbelievable. It's such a great...
I think you and I were talking about this. Yeah.
Maybe we were. I think
Yeah. I'm with you. A lot of people would knock my Van Halen taste. Like I know my singer, and if you've listened to my band, you'll know that my singer's like second to none. She's fucking incredible, but she's on the David Lee Roth train. So, and me and my drummer are both Hagar.
Little guitars, man. Little guitars. Little guitars. You could sway me on this with little guitars. Ice Cream Man, Eddie's solo and Ice Cream Man, it's unbelievable. What a musician. And then granted, the vocal, there's a limitation to the Roth stuff, but it's still, dude, the lyrics of Jump. Yeah. See, now you're gonna make me change my mind here. I'm talking about everything. It's impossible to.
It's all fantastic stuff, dude. And I'm not a.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask, did you get in enough McIntyre in this interview, or did you? We can split this up into 2 episodes if you want to go deeper into McIntyre and the local party machine.
We'll have to do another one because I just like, as in yesterday, started kind of listening. Like I listened to him on Michael Malice, I listened to him with Dave Smith, and then I listened to some of the stuff on his own channel, and then I listened to him on Pete's show, and everyone kept telling me I need to listen to him, and I'm like, I think I do, but like at first I'm like, I didn't really hear anything that impressive, and then like the more and more I listen, I'm like, I'm liking what he's saying, and I don't necessarily agree with 100% everything, but like an overwhelming majority, I'm like, there's definitely something that needs to be taken away here that I don't get in my typical political dialogue.
There is we had a party breakfast recently, and I'll kind of close with this. And several of us under 40 or right around the 35 to 40-year-old range, we stood up and spoke. And we talked about how this party as a whole needs to stop apologizing for its conservative values. This is what our people want, and we have got to start standing on what we believe more strongly. And when I stood up and spoke, I specifically, we had a state representative in there, and I specifically gave the state of Indiana credit for banning this transmutilation of children. Like, that makes me proud to be a Republican. And so again, for your listeners, there is a tangible place in the Republican Party where you can get engaged locally, and you can, for lack of a better word, be an evangelist inside a party that has truly lost its way in a lot of ways. And you can start speaking to the party, but you need to speak to the party from within its own tradition. And that is why I continue to hammer the paleo tradition within the Republican Party. And you find Republican heroes that you believe in, whether it's Thomas Massey, whether it's Pat Buchanan. You can go back to Harding and Coolidge. Read the great conservative thinkers and start speaking to this party from within its own tradition, and encouraging this party and demonstrating to this party to stand on its convictions courageously. You have to lead. That this party is desperate for leaders. Desperate. Look, man, like, it is not getting into politics. There's not a high bar, especially Republican politics. All right. It is a wasteland right now. The opportunity for paleo libertarians, for Mises libertarians to get some serious influence in this party. You're not going to take it over, but you can have influence. The soil is fertile.
Mm-hmm. Nice, man.
I botched my closing.
No, dude, that's okay. Well, you got one more shot. Is there anything you want to shout out? Anywhere people can check you out, support you, anything like that?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter, PaleoGOP. You'll get a lot more of this crap that I've been talking about today. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the shout outs are all to the people you mentioned. I mean, it's Tho Bishop, it's Pete Quinones, it's Aaron McIntyre. Those are the guys right now that have really thrown fuel on the fire. They may not be, these are not my foundational political thinkers in terms of my ideas, right? We're talking Rothbard, we're talking Mises, Hoppe, Buchanan, Tolkien. All right. Those guys are my giants, but man, it's Tho and Pete and Aaron that really have sort of led the way and helped me understand how I can bring my ideas, my political values, connect that to like a local civic life. And sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's nasty, but to quote The Godfather, this is the business we have chosen.
Nice, man. All right.
That's my shout out.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I think that was a good closer. All right, man. Yeah, if you don't got anything else, we'll close her out. And dude, we'll definitely do it again sometime.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kyle.
Yeah, dude, for sure. All right, everybody. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed the conversation. I know did. I know I did. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. I should always plug at the beginning of every show, but I'm absolutely terrible with it. And once again, thanks for everybody for listening, and take care.